both sides, aren't they?
Yes, Senator.
Both Republicans and Democrats are forum shopping, aren't they?
Certainly.
Professor, do you disagree with that?
I think both sides are abusing them. I agree.
Okay. Both sides.
Yeah.
There are no clean hands here. Now,
Before we get into this absolute masterclass from Senator John Kennedy, do me a favor real quick. If you believe in the Constitution, the rule of law, and calling out hypocrisy wherever it hides, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what the mainstream media won't tell you.
would any of you advise a client to defy a federal court order?
No.
None of you would? How about you, Professor?
I mean, under most circumstances, we follow the government and private parties follow court orders. I suppose it's not, I would not rule out ever the possibility that in a sufficiently egregious order, there should be some consideration of whether there's a way.
So in some cases,
I think it's a qualified answer,
in
yes.
some cases you would.
In an extremely narrow band of cases, I think it would be considered, yes.
Okay. Do any of you think that nationwide or universal injunctions are not being abused?
I'm not sure what if I may, Senator, I'm not sure what the time horizon of the question is. I don't think that there could be good faith disagreements about the correctness of some of them, but I have not seen in the last 4 months abuse. No.
I've read your stuff and I've read your writings. I don't want to get bogged down with this, but I have little respect for your opinion because I've read your stuff. When someone is in the White House that you agree with and someone gets a universal injunction against him, you don't like universal injunctions. You called them judges acting like they're politicians in robes and judges looking like crass political actors. But now that President Trump's in the White House, who you dislike, you think that universal injunctions taste like pumpkin pie. So I have to discount what you say because I think you act on your political beliefs. And I worry that that's what you're teaching your kids. So I'll leave you out of that. Do you think nationwide injunctions are being abused?
Certainly, Senator. I think that is.
They're being abused by both sides, aren't they?
Yes, Senator.
Both Republicans and Democrats are forum shopping, aren't they?
Certainly.
Professor, do you disagree with that?
I think both sides are abusing them. I agree.
Okay. Both sides.
Yeah.
There are no clean hands here. Now, your suggestion is that when a federal judge issues a nationwide injunction, there should be an automatic stay and an expedited right of appeal. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Do you disagree with that?
I haven't given enough thought to have a position on it, Senator.
I suspect, Professor, your answer will be it depends on who's president.
No, Senator.
Let me ask you about this. What if we had a rule? I was reading an article the other day. I'm not suggesting it. I just want your opinions. That said, if a president, any president, issues an executive order, let's say, that clearly violates settled Supreme Court precedent, that a federal judge can't issue a nationwide injunction. For example, if a federal a president issued an order that said no one in America has right to counsel any longer, including but not limited to, in a felony case, having the government pay for your lawyer if you can't afford it. That clearly violates settled Gideon v. Wainwright. In that case, a judge has no authority or does have authority to issue a nationwide injunction. But in a case where the law is unclear, a judge should refrain from that. Now, obviously, we'd have to trust our judges, but we're supposed to be able to trust them anyway. What do you think about that?
I don't agree with that, Senator, because I think universal injunctions transgress the limitations under Article 3, even if the underlying merits are clear.
I happen to agree with you. I don't think there's any basis under Article 3, under Supreme Court precedent, under the English common law for nationwide injunctions. I think politicians have helped judges, and many judges are politicians, to just make it up. And many of them are like Professor Shaw here. If they like the president, they're against nationwide injunctions. If they don't like the president, they're for him. Professor, let me ask you this while I have you. On April 22nd, 2024, you said there are some members of the Supreme Court that are evil. Which justices were you talking about?
I'll take it your word, Senator. I don't recall using that word, but
All right, here's what you said. You were talking about the majority opinion in Muldrow v. City of St. Louis. You said, quote, Justice Kagan, will she be able to control the opinion's future distortion by her evil colleagues? Probably not, end quote. Who were you talking about?
sir, I'm very skeptical. If it's a transcription, it was probably a transcription error. I do not think I said.
No, you said it. Why don't you own up to it? You call some of the members of the Supreme Court evil. Now, which ones do you think are evil?
I would have to refresh my recollection. I've been very critical
You're
of some
embarrassed
members of the
that
Supreme
you made
Court.
that statement, aren't you?
I'm
You're an officer
Senator, it
of the
doesn't sound
court.
like something that
You know
I
what
would
I'm
say.
embarrassed at? That you're teaching our kids.
I don't refer to Supreme Court justices as evil
You did,
in
here
the classroom,
on
sir.
your podcast, April 22nd, 2024.
Okay, well,
Big as Dallas. And you're an officer of the court, and you're here advising us to be respectful to federal judges, and you say they're evil members of the United States Supreme Court? Gag me with a spoon. You're part of what's the problem in all of this.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Senator Durbin.
So I'm going to give the panel members an opportunity to.
Now let's talk about what just happened, because this wasn't just another Senate hearing. This was a moment where the mask slipped and the entire game was exposed right there on the record. Senator Kennedy starts with what should be the most basic question in America. Would you ever advise a client to defy a federal court order? Any serious lawyer, any serious officer of the court should say no without hesitation. And at first, that's what we hear. But then one professor just couldn't help himself. He starts hedging, qualifying, leaving the door cracked open just enough to suggest that in some extreme cases, maybe, just maybe, defying a court order could be acceptable. That right there should set off alarm bells for every American. Because once you start telling people that court orders are optional depending on how much you disagree with them, you no longer have a legal system. You have vibes, feelings, and raw political power. Then Kennedy shifts to nationwide injunctions, and this is where things get really interesting. Universal injunctions have become a weapon. A single district judge can freeze policies across all 50 states, often based on shaky reasoning and obvious political motivation. Kennedy presses the witnesses on whether this power is being abused, and at first you get the usual lawyer dodge. Lots of words, very little substance. But Kennedy isn't having it. He calls out the hypocrisy directly. He points out that when a president the professor likes is in the White House, nationwide injunctions are suddenly unconstitutional overreach. But when it's President Trump, they suddenly taste like pumpkin pie. That line stung because it was true, and everyone in that room knew it. This is the core problem with the activist legal class. Their principles change depending on who holds power. The Constitution is treated like a suggestion, not a binding framework. Kennedy flat out tells the professor that he discounts his opinions because they're driven by politics, not law. And frankly, that's a charitable assessment. To their credit, other witnesses finally admit the truth. Both sides abuse nationwide injunctions. Both Republicans and Democrats forum shop. There are no clean hands here. That admission alone undercuts years of media narratives pretending this is a one-sided issue. The discussion then turns to a proposal that should honestly be common sense. If a judge issues a nationwide injunction, there should be an automatic stay and an expedited appeal. Why? Because no single judge should have the unchecked power to override the elected branches nationwide without immediate review. That's not radical. That's constitutional balance. Kennedy then walks through a hypothetical. If a president issued an executive order that clearly violated settled Supreme Court precedent, something absurd like eliminating the right to counsel, should a judge be allowed to step in broadly? Even here, Kennedy is careful. He's not advocating judicial anarchy. He's probing where constitutional authority actually comes from. And this is where the professor reveals his worldview. He argues that nationwide injunctions violate Article the 3rd no matter what, even if the law is crystal clear. Kennedy actually agrees with him on the constitutional problem, but then takes it further. He points out that many judges today act like politicians in robes, inventing powers that don't exist because politicians let them get away with it. Then comes the moment that made this clip go viral. Kennedy confronts the professor with his own words. On a broadcast, the professor referred to some Supreme Court justices as evil. Not misguided. Not wrong. Evil. Kennedy asks a simple question. Which justices are evil? And suddenly, the confidence disappears. The professor claims he doesn't remember. He suggests maybe it was a transcription error. Kennedy doesn't let him squirm out of it. He reads the quote verbatim and presses him to own his words. This is where Kennedy delivers the knockout punch. He says he's embarrassed that this man is teaching America's kids. And he's right. If you are an officer of the court, if you're demanding respect for judicial authority, you don't get to call Supreme Court justices evil when you don't like their rulings. That's not legal criticism. That's ideological contempt. This exchange perfectly captures what's wrong with our institutions. The same people who demand obedience to judges also feel free to demonize them when decisions don't go their way. They want respect without accountability, power without limits, and authority without humility. Senator Kennedy did what too few Republicans are willing to do. He said the quiet part out loud. He exposed the double standards, the political games, and the erosion of constitutional boundaries happening right in front of us. This isn't about personalities. It's about whether America is governed by laws or by elites who think they're smarter than the Constitution. Because once judges and professors decide that rules only apply when convenient, the Republic doesn't last very long. If you believe the Constitution means what it says, if you believe no one is above the law, and if you think judicial power should have limits just like every other branch, then this exchange should matter to you. Let me know in the comments what you think about nationwide injunctions and judicial activism. And once again, make sure you're subscribed, because we're going to keep breaking down the moments that the legacy media hopes you never see.